Today begins chapter 2 of the A Dresden Quilt Along, and we are going to start the fun part of making blocks. Our task this week is to make 6 blocks, and today's video is going to be a demo of how to make one. So I'm going to walk from beginning to end how to make this block. Last week we did all of our cutting. I hope that you got through that part. If not, if you're still working on it, that's okay. If you haven't registered for this Quilt Along yet and you're not getting the Quilt Along emails every Wednesday, there's a link right below this video that you can sign up, get registered, and jump in. We're going to be working on this quilt all winter long, so you have plenty of time to get started right now. So giveaway details and how to get registered for that is going to be at the very end of this video. Let's start the demo. Hey, we are making 6 blocks today. I am so stinking excited. There are definitely some ways to make this more efficient that we're going to cover in future videos of this quilt along, but I just want to give like a basic demo of the block getting made. So go ahead and pull enough low volume squares for your background. So we're making 6 blocks, so we need 24 of those squares, and you'll need 20 Dresden blades per block. So you want 10 of each fabric. If you're confused, look at your pattern. It goes straight into what I'm talking about. I'm gonna go ahead, I've got my 24 background squares here. I'm gonna go ahead and get my blades sorted into. Okay, I've got my background squares. I got 24 of them. That's how many you need. And then I've got 12 stacks of 10 blades each. So little stacks, and each block, we're making 6 blocks again, each block will use 2 of these stacks, right? So everything else I can put back in my project bin. So I'm just gonna put everything else away. That way it's, you know, kind of out of my way and not sitting around making me crazy. All right, so what we're gonna do in this lesson is we're gonna go ahead and cover 4 patches. We're gonna get that knocked out. Then we'll cover making the Dresden plates, and then we will put that center on and make it all so pretty and finished, and I just can't wait to see it. So let's start with the 4 patches. Okay, so I've got my 4 squares, and this is how these are gonna go together, just like this. So I'm gonna sew this row, and then I'm gonna sew this row. And let's take these to the pressing mat. Here's my 2 rows, and I'm just going to give these a little press just to set those seams. Doing this really just makes, you know, heats up that seam, makes it easier to press in either direction. It also fixes any kind of tension issues that you may have. So all set, we're gonna press this row to this side and this row to that side. So this seam, gonna go just like this. And this seam is going to point this way. So just like that. Then we're going to flip row 1 on top of row 2. Grab a pin. And first we're going to match up this seam right here. So we're going to nest these seams, and you can really feel them lock into place. I like to call it them bumping up and kissing, but you can really feel it between your forefinger and your thumb. When you get them in place, you'll put a pin right there, and this is going to help you line up those seams. Now if you don't care about lining up seams, that's okay. You don't have to care. Some people care and some people don't. It's totally up to you whether you put an effort into that or not. If you're struggling getting those seams to line up, you know, you're going to get there. You just have to keep trying, and eventually it's going to come second nature to you. All right, so I've got that one in a very particular place. I've just kind of put these on the ends to hold it. Let's go sew this. Okay, all sewn. Grab your iron and set this seam just like that. And then we're gonna press this seam open. So we're gonna do like this, upside down, and we're gonna slip our finger into this middle seam and then just press it like that. I'm using a little bit of steam. One thing I'm not doing is I'm not ironing. I'm lifting every time you see me move. Flip over. All right, and then spray with a little bit of starch, or this is actually pressing spray, not starch. And we're gonna press again. All right, and that is our 4-patch. All right, so time to move on to those Dresden blades. All right, so now you need 2 of these stacks to take for your first Dresden, and just pick 2. Pick 2 that you like the look of. I like to choose like one of them busy and then one of them a little bit calmer, like that. Because if I was to use, let's see, I mean, those 2 together would be okay, but I think like this one would look better with that one. You see how one of them is a little bit busy and then one of them is a little bit calmer? I like to do it like that. You, of course, do whatever you want. If you want it crazy busy, go crazy busy. Do what you like the best. So I'm gonna go with these 2, and we're gonna go to our sewing machine. So there's my blades. What we're gonna do now is just turn these blades into finished blades. So to do that, you're gonna pick one of these up and you're going to fold it just like that, right? We're gonna send it to through the sewing machine, this side going in first, this side here going in first. And you want to do that because occasionally when you put them through like this, sometimes they get turned or, you know, out of sync. Whereas I find that when you put them through on the fold, they just come out a little bit better and you don't have these little tiny errors in them. So we're going to send them like that. Go straight. And we're using a 1/4 inch seam. And we're going to do that for every one of these. So I'm just going to keep on chain piecing these little babies up. I'm going to not make you watch all this. And when I got it all done, we will move on. All right, I've got them all chain pieced, and I'm just going to start clipping these threads. Again, you should have 20 blades for your block. All right, we're going to gather all of these up and go to the pressing mat. All right, here is where you're going to use your pointer that came with your Dresden ruler. Now, if you don't have one of these, that's okay. You can use like a dull pencil or a pen that's point isn't out. We just want to take these, flip them over. In fact, sometimes I'll sit here, I'll have a basket of these going, and I'll just sit here and get them all flipped out. And all we're doing is flipping them right side out. I'm not taking, as you can see, any special measures. I'm not being careful. I'm just flipping them. All right, and then this is where you take your, whatever you're using, and then you just push that point out, and it should look pretty much like that. Now, I have pushed too hard, made the whole thing come out, so don't push too hard, but you want a decent point on this thing. So I'll sit here, do that for all of these, get them all done. Let me finish this up off camera, and then I'll show you how to get them pressed. All right, so all points are coming out. Now we want to take, I'd like to take it in my hands just like this, and I want to put that seam, I want to eyeball it to the very center of my blade. Now, if it's off a little bit, it doesn't really matter. You want to just get it as straight as you possibly can, and then you'll give it a little press. Just like that. And I sit here and do that for all of them. I'm using a little bit of steam. And you know, don't do this. We never do that in quilting. We always are going up and down, AKA pressing. Okay, so let me go ahead and get these sorted back into the stacks of the same colors or same fabric. All right. Just like that, and let's go back to the sewing machine. All right, so I'm gonna put one stack on this side of me and one stack on this side of me. And then we're gonna bring them together just like that. You always want one color always on top of the other color, so don't be mixing them up. Send it through your sewing machine with your 1/4 inch seam. And then we will get these all sewn just like this, chain piecing style. I think I'm about to run out of thread. All right, fresh thread. And then keep going. Sometimes you can see where these don't meet. If that's the case, if you're struggling with something like this, make sure that they meet up here instead of down here. So one little thing, I've either miscut or done something with a slight error to it. Those teeny tiny little errors like that are actually not going to matter with your Dresden plates. So don't spend time beating yourself up about that. Let me get these all chain pieced together and then we'll move on. All right, major tip time. When you start cutting these off, make sure that you cut them right there at this part of the thread. Don't cut over here, because if you do, you'll just have to go back and cut all these little tiny pieces of thread off your quilt. So just kind of do it now and save yourself that trouble. I think this is the only thing that I ever am particular about when chain piecing and cutting these connecting threads. Okay, I'm gonna put like maybe half over this side now, and then I've got this half, and we will open these up just like this, one on top of the other, just like that, and then send the pairs back through our sewing machine so that we can get them sewn into 4s. And then same thing, make sure you're cutting those connecting threads right there at the top of a Dresden blade, not at the bottom. All right, and then we'll do the same thing where we open them up and we'll sew them together. And this time, after you pair up 2 sets of 4, you should have just one little leftover right here. We'll pair these 8s up. There's 8, 8. And then we'll put this one on there, this little set of 4 to our 16. And then remember that each of these blades, each of these plates have 20 blades each. When we got all 20 on there, we put the 2 ends together and sew them together. And you should get something that looks like this. All right, let's go back to the pressing mat. All right, we're gonna flip this over. And I want you to just kind of put your iron like right here give it a little bit of a tug. Don't pull super tight, but pull firm enough that you're getting all of these seams opened out, right? And then we'll just kind of go like this. If you're struggling with this, keep going. You're going to get better at this. We have 20 of these plates to make, and by the time that we get done, you're gonna be great. All right, when I get it done, flip it over, and then just kind of smooth it out. Press again, and it should look like that. How delicious. So pretty, right? Let me put my iron up. All right, so you're gonna take that 4-patch, and we want to get this centered. And how to get it centered is to turn your Dresden plate where you've got one seam up, one seam down, one seam left, one seam right, and you're gonna match those with the seams of your background. And that is how you'll know that you've got it situated, centered on your background. They tend to move a little bit, so this may take you a little to do. All right, when you have it where you want it, grab your pins, and then we're going to just slip a couple of pins in. You can put any amount of pins that you want. This part doesn't really matter. You just basically don't want it to move around. And that looks pretty good. All right, we're gonna go back to our sewing machine. All right, we need to top stitch the outside of this Dresden plate to that background. And I want to change my thread out. Now, normally I use So Fine, just a white thread for piecing. You do not want to use that on these plates. You can, if it's all you have, it's all you have. But if I was to put that white thread on here, I mean, it is going to stand out. It's I think it's a 50 weight thread, and I do not want something that thick on my plate if I can avoid it, right? Sometimes you can't, and that's okay. I'm going to use this Microquilter. Now, this is a 100 weight thread. I'm using it in the color silver because silver tends to disappear in multicolored fabrics. So again, if I was to use a white on this darker fabric, it would just stand out too much. So I like to use the silver for pretty much everything except for very dark colors. If I was going to use a very dark color, I might go to a darker gray. They have one shade darker than this. This thread can be difficult to use on certain types of needles. What I like about Superior Threads, though, is it tells you which needle to use. So that can be helpful. So let me go ahead and get my, my thread changed over. All right, so I've got my thread changed from the thread I usually piece with to this Microquilter. And I normally piece at a 2 on my sewing machine. I just want to turn that up a little bit. I don't want to go all the way to the 3, but I want to go, I don't know, I think it's right like at 2.75. That's what I'm gonna go with. Then I'm gonna put my Dresden block up under my needle. All right, and then I like to start at one of these seams. So I'm gonna put my needle just in front of one of those seams, and I'm making sure consistency is key here. I want to make sure that this edge of my blade is hitting the same spot on my foot on all of my blades. That's not something that you have to do. It just tends to look a little bit better when I try to get that look. Put my needle down, and I'm gonna back stitch a couple of stitches, and then I'm gonna take off sewing this perimeter. When I get to a point, I lift my foot and pivot around, And this is where, if you have a knee lift, this block is where it's really going to come in handy at. So keep on sewing. Every time I get to a seam, I have to pivot. Oh, let me go ahead and cut this thread right here. And this is how you top stitch. And this step is really, it's really where Dresden plates become time consuming at. But I promise you, it is going to be absolutely gorgeous. You're just gonna keep going around. Do the best you can, keeping straight lines. If you mess up, I promise you, especially if you're using this thread, you're not even gonna see it. This thread really just makes things disappear. All right, when I get back to where my stitches should meet, I just do a few back stitches, cut my thread, and there it is. And I mean, I think you can see what I mean about that thread, about how it just doesn't take away from, you know, your plate. You're not seeing that big chunky white thread there, right? And if you look really closely at my Dresden plate, you can see that I tried to stay in the right place, but I definitely did not succeed all the time. So don't give yourself a hard time. There was one moment where I took too many stitches right here and I had to back stitch to get back in the right place. You know, just be where you are, and you know, it's going to be beautiful no matter what because you made it yourself. All right, so we are going to do the massively fun part of putting that center on. So let's get going with that. All right, so I'm going to pop a little demo of how to use the heat and bond, and a demo of, you know, if you're using scraps, how to make the circles, or if you're using my Dresden Flower Center fabric. I'm going to show you a demo of that right now. All right, so I have found this scrap, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of this. Now, if I'm working on, like, say, a Dresden quilt, I'm probably going to leave this on the yardage, but I just had this tiny piece. Normally, I would have taken my yardage, rolled it out a little bit, and then cut it to fit the scrap of fabric, fat quarter yard, whatever you're working with. All right, but what you want to do is you want to get, this is a scrap, so I'm putting the scrap right on top of it. Now you've got two sides of this. You've got this bumpy or rough textured side, and then you've got this nice smooth paper side. You want to make sure that this and the back of your fabric are layered up together. So I've got top of fabric, back of fabric, bumpy side, smooth side, because that bumpy side there is the glue, okay? So we put them together like that, and then you grab your iron and then you just iron it. Sometimes I will even flip it over and iron it this way. All right, so if you are making a Dresden block like this, you will now need to cut your circles. All right, now if you are fussy cutting, say you've got a little bird print going on, you might want to take
you know, one of these very expensive, nice rulers. I love them though. I know they're expensive. And kind of figure out where you want to cut like that. But again, these rulers are expensive. We have them in the shop if you're interested in them, and they do make fussy cutting a little bit easier, but I can almost do the same thing with different things around my house. Here is an embroidery hoop. Say my bird was right here. There I go. Boom. Done. Little bowl does the same thing. Now, sometimes it's easier, you know, to see things, you know, versus a bowl. You can't really see what you're cutting, but you can with an embroidery hoop. So there's different things around the house, but let's say that you've just got a solid situation like I have going on, and you just want to cut as much circles as you can for your Dresden centers. A situation like that, I might, you know, either grab my ruler or grab my embroidery hoop, and then I just start doing this number, drawing my circles, fitting as many as I can, just like that. I think that's all I'm going to be able to get. I'm going to grab my fabric scissors. These are from Havel's, by the way, and they are amazing. They cut all the way to the tip. That's why I like them so much. And then I just start cutting out my circle shape. All right. I would go ahead and cut, you know, all of them out that I can get. And the Dresden quilts are especially great for using up, you know, little bits of scrap like this. So a great thing to use your scrap basket for. All right, so I would cut up all of them, obviously, but then I would sit here, peel this off, peel this paper off. It takes it just a second to get it going, but once you get it, it is there. All right, that is garbage. This is your sticker, basically. All right, so what you would do now is get this centered onto a Dresden plate. I know this one already has its center, but just for demo purposes, I would put it right here. I would use my iron and let this, you know, it'll stick to the top of this plate. All right, so this is not permanent, but it's going to feel pretty close to permanent if you're, you know, doing this number right here. You see it's not coming off. It's not even coming up a little bit. If I was to get in there and dig it out, I could get this thing off. So if you make a mistake, you can fix it. But if you wash your quilt without stitching on top of this, it's going to peel off when it comes out of the dryer. So you definitely want to eventually stitch this. I just usually save that step for when I'm quilting the quilt. When it's all done and we're doing our quilting, then I will make sure that I will stitch all the way around this raw edge and, you know, whatever, maybe with a swirl, maybe with, you know, diagonal lines, or maybe a grid. So however you want to do it, you will eventually have to do that. But as far as the blocks, this is enough for right now. All right, so let me show you another way to think about it if you're not wanting to do circles. I have my Dresden Flower Center fabric. I've backed it with that heat and bond already, and then I just sit here and start cutting out the flower shape. I'm almost done. So same thing, but instead of just your circle, I'm gonna have a flower for my Dresden plate. So there's a flower, works the same way. I peel off the stuff, I put it in the center of my plate, and voila. That's so cute. That is so cute. Okay, so there's that option too if you want to, you know, get super creative. But if you're sitting there thinking, I have a scrap bin just full of fabrics, this is a great way to go too. So do as you please, whatever your heart desires, make it happen. It's really, really simple.
So I've got a couple yards of the heat and bond, and then I've got my fabric. And one thing that I wanted to kind of think about is contrast. So if I put one of these flowers in the center here, and it's the same colors, it doesn't have quite the same pop. So I'm kind of looking for for colors of these flowers that will give me that pop. And I think I really like this yellow, or maybe this really pale pink. But I'm going to go ahead and put that heat and bond on the back of this whole thing. It's not going to be a perfect fit because the heat and bond is only like, I think it's 17 inches wide. And then I've got, you know, 42 inches here. So I'm going to do the best I can. Let me get my plate out of the way. I'm going to put out some of this heat and bond. You can see how much more narrow it is. All right. Move that. I'm going to take my fabric. Now, if you're working with scraps, this is so much easier than what I'm doing. Because I want to work with this fabric and I got this huge yard, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me. But I'm going to just kind of lay it up here just like this. I know you've already watched that demo of me showing you how this works, but I'm just going to just kind of do it on screen with you, just in case you're using the same thing I am. I'm going to cut that heat and bond off. And I've got a yard of that Dresden Flower Center fabric, or a half a yard, a little bit, maybe a little bit more than a half yard. And as you can see, it is not as wide. So I'm really only adding this heat and bond to about half of my yard, or maybe a little bit, no, 17 inches of my yard. So a little bit less than half. So I'll have to add more to this bottom half, but I think this top half is just enough to get me started where I don't have to, you know, fool with it. So I'm grabbing my iron and I'm just ironing this fabric to the heat and bond. Double check that if you're doing the same thing as me, that you have the bumpy side of the heat and bond to the back side of your fabric. Because if you do it the other way, you're going to have a mess on your hands. So do be mindful of that. The hotter your iron, the faster this goes. I won't make you watch all this. Let me get it done. And oh, one thing I did want to say, if you're working this the same way as I am, start in the middle and work your way out. You just saw me start over here and now I've got center problems. So start in the middle and work your way to your edges. That way you don't have any flowers messed up and you can use, you know, all your flowers versus some of them being a little messy. Okay, I think I've got it. And just to make sure that you know what I've got going on here is, here is my yard, or a little bit less than a yard, and here is where that heat and bond is stopping. So I'll have to do this other half with a different piece of heat and bond. But I've got my flowers all done. Let me swap cameras so you can see me cut one of these out. There is my plate. I'm gonna pick out one of these flowers, and I really think I like this one. So I'm gonna go in here, maybe kind of bypassing or going in the center of some of these other ones until I get there, because I'm being particular and want, you know, this very particular fabric. I'm actually going to go ahead and cut it out, and then I will get more detailed with my cutting. Oh, in just a minute. Let me maneuver this around. If you're using the same Dresden ruler as me, most of these flowers should fit perfectly. There might be a couple where you need some of this background, but a lot of them should just fit really, really nicely. All right, don't need that. All right, I want to cut out this to look exactly like a flower. So here I go. All right, so I've got it cut out and it looks like it's going to fit pretty perfectly. I kind of want to be careful about these dips in and make sure that I kind of twist and turn it until I don't see like something like that. I don't want any little holes
So I want to be careful, all right? Let me tear this off. All right, making sure that those little dips inward don't show any of my raw edges, you know, right here. So be a little mindful, take your time. You won't have to fuss about this so much if you aren't cutting in so much. Just do your best. All right, taking our iron. It's gonna be hot. It really probably needs to cool before I start, you know, trying to flick it like that. But that is it. All right, so this is not a permanent situation right here. But for right now, I would call this block completed. Now, when we get to quilting our quilts, we have to make sure that we stitch over this with thread, but I like to save that for the quilting part. So I'm not going to do it right now, and I'm calling this block done, but just remember that eventually this has got to be stitched down more securely. But that's it. That's how you make a block. Yeah, so I've got 5 more blocks to finish. I'm going to go ahead and get all of my blocks done, and I will show you everything when it's complete. Okay, here are my blocks, 6 blocks, all completed. That was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and I forgot how great these are to make. There's nothing like them, right? This block here, look at those edges. You see how it dips in? I had to actually go and put a little background on this one because when I cut, you know, right into those dips, it showed some of those raw edges. So I had to be careful with that particular flower. But the rest of the flowers, you know, it just really covered that center very, very good. So watch out for those flowers that dip in if you're using the Dresden Flower Center fabrics. If you're interested in using them, we still have them in the shop. So the Dresden Flower Centers are still available, and we're going to try to keep them in stock throughout this quilt along. But fun, 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 busy, busy, busy. I tried to calm it down, but there's no hope for this. It is just busy city, but I think it's going to be gorgeous, and I'm excited about it. All right, so let's talk prizes. We're giving away this Fat 8th bundle on November 22nd to 1 participant who registers. To get yourself registered for the giveaways, there's a link that came in your email today. If you haven't signed up yet, just click the link right below this video and get signed up, and you'll get all the information that you've missed so far and details on how to get registered for this giveaway. Let me know how y'all like this giveaway system. I know it's a little bit different from some of my prior quilt-alongs. Normally all the giveaways take place on Instagram, but I was trying to make this, you know, available to people who aren't, you know, on social media too. So just trying it out, seeing how it works. Let me know if you like it or if you don't like it. All right, I will pop in your inbox next Wednesday with that prize winner's information. So I will see you then. I hope you enjoy making these blocks. Don't forget to use the hashtag A Dresden QAL on Instagram or Facebook so that I can see your progress. And I'm sure everybody else wants to see it too. I'll see you next week.